Hey friends, this is the Miss Volfie from our Half Acre Homestead with making basic yeast bread for beginners. So what you're going to need is flour, sugar, oil, yeast, salt, 2 cups of warm water. Let's get started. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a teaspoon of sugar and mix it into our warm water. Now you got to make sure your water is warm, not hot. Warm like you would bathe a newborn baby in. If it's any hotter than that, it can kill the yeast. Okay, and we're going to add 1 teaspoon of yeast. You can use instant, you can use dry active, it's totally up to you. Give it another stir, and we're going to put this in the bowl and let that yeast do its business. Okay, our yeast has fluffed up, and to this I'm going to start, and I'm going to put in 1 cup of flour, teaspoon of salt, and we're going to start whisking our flour in. Now, many of you may be asking yourself why I'm doing this by hand and not in the KitchenAid. Because my very first basic yeast bread for beginners video, that's 2 cups and that's 3 cups. It is very old, and I didn't have a KitchenAid back then, and I want this to be an honest representation of how to make bread very, very basically. I don't knead very well anymore. My wrists and hands are bad, but I'm going to do it for this video. I can if I have to, but my KitchenAid really does suffice. So there's cup of flour number 4 and cup of flour number 5. And we are just going to take our dough scraper here and scrape this all out onto our flour. So just for a second, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of oil, and I'm going to start mixing this. That oil should have went in with the first cup of flour, but it didn't, so I apologize. I'm only human. I make mistakes. A little bit of oil adds elasticity. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take my cloth, and a lot of people wonder why I use a tablecloth or a towel. I don't normally use a terry cloth towel. I would use a tea towel. But why I use a towel or tablecloth to do pastry and dough on, because it's really easy. When you're done, you flick this outside, any dust, flour, or whatever, and you throw it in the laundry, and it's much more easier to clean than a table that has to be scraped and washed. So now I just take my cloth, and if you're like me and you have bad wrists, this makes a huge difference to the kneading process. It folds your dough, you fold the cloth and you press, and it folds your dough for you so that you don't necessarily have to get the sticky part on your hands. And I'm just going to knead this until it is the way I want it. And when it gets sticky again, I use my cloth and I press. All kneading is folding the dough and pressing it together over and over and over again, like this. See, we're just going to roll it and push it with the heel of your hand. Now you don't want your dough too dry. You want it smooth and elastic, which is pretty good. But if it's sticking to your hands like that did right there, then you continue to knead using the flour on the table. This is the only part of bread making that can get complicated if you allow it to. For the simple reason is you put too much flour, or the water's too hot, you kill the yeast. Or if you put too much flour, it's a dry lump of dough. So there it is. It's nice and smooth and elastic. A little bit tacky, but that's okay. Because if it's too dry, it has to fight to rise. So we're going to take our bowl and we're going to drop in a little bit of oil. You can use any kind of vegetable oil you like. I like organic avocado oil. And I'm just going to drop that in there. And I'm going to coat my dough with oil. Why am I coating my dough with oil? And you only need like a tablespoon. I don't want it to stick to the sides of the bowl too much, or the cloth I'm going to cover it in. So I'm going to go shake this out, and I'm going to use it to cover the bowl, and then I'm going to put the bowl covered in my oven with just the oven light on. That produces just enough heat for this to rise, okay? Now, if you don't want to use the oven light to rise your dough, then just go ahead. We're going to punch this down. Well, you can call it punching down. Just go ahead and put it in a warm spot in your kitchen, next to your wood stove. Heck, you can set it on top of your dryer and cover it with a towel. Let's get this out of here. It's still quite moist. Sorry for the arm there. Dust the cloth here with a little bit more flour. And we're going to re-knead this, and it's beautifully elastic. And now I'm just going to roll up my loaf and pop it in a parchment lined pan. Now you can just butter the pan if you want, but I like to use parchment because then I don't have to wash the pan. All right, see that? We're going to pop this back in the oven covered with the tablecloth and let it rise again. Actually, I'm not even going to pop it back in the oven. I'm just going to cover it and let it rise again. Okay. There is our loaf of bread. Isn't that beautiful? This is going to go in a 375-degree oven for about 35 minutes. Okay, so here's our loaf of bread. And this is why I love parchment paper. Ouch, that's friggin' hot. Now all I'm going to do is I've refolded my tablecloth so the dusty side's out, is I'm just going to take this and wrap it and let it sit in the tablecloth for about 20 minutes. This softens the crust. This is the Miss Volfie from our half-acre homestead saying it's bread, not rocket science. You can do it. Take care. Bye-bye.